Hi, I'm Corey Joe, or WeCJ, and should Sol Ring be banned? That is the question that I am going to be answering today. And the way I decided I'm going to do it is by going over there is a total of 9 cards that do a form of ability that Sol Ring does by tapping for 2 colors, like 2 colors wastes. So what I'm going to do is kind of do a versus type of thing. So it'll be Sol Ring versus these 9 cards. I'll be going over them individually and giving my thoughts, opinions on the card and how it compares to Sol Ring. So there is 1 creature, 3 artifacts, and 4 lands we will be going over today. We can't start off this versus battle without the Sol Ring itself, so I know a lot of people that enjoy Magic the Gathering and know the basics of Magic the Gathering all know what a Sol Ring is, but just in case I will be going over Sol Ring now. Sol Ring, for one, you get an artifact that's an uncommon, tap, add 2 wastes. Sol Ring's first competitor is Platinum Mire. So when it comes to this card, it costs 2 more extra mana than it does a Sol Ring. A Sol Ring costs 1, this costs 3. However, it is also a creature, and that's where the biggest downside of this card is. Because it is a creature, it has summoning sickness. So even when you play it, a Sol Ring you get to use right away, but with this creature you have to wait until the next turn unless you have haste. And the other problem is that it is a creature. Creatures are the easiest targeted and easiest to get rid of and put into your graveyard than any other card type. So because of this, it costs extra, it takes a turn to activate unless you have other circumstances, and it's easier to kill. This is a clear win that Sol Ring is a better card. So now we're on to the artifacts. So when it comes to artifacts, they are both going to be the same, so we don't have to worry about when it comes to me saying how they both are activated, because artifacts you're allowed to use on the turn they are played. And there is a total of 3. There is Mana Crypt, Sisay's Ring, and Soul Talisman. So next on the versus, it is Sol Ring versus Mana Crypt. Mana Crypt costs 0, so it is the first thing you get to play. You can even play it before a land. It untaps on each of your turns, however, it does 3 damage to you, and I don't really like that. However, it is circumstantial. So it is 1 cheaper, but you still both get to play it on your first turn. However, you can activate Sol Ring with no back clauses where Mana Crypt does damage. But that's not even the worst thing when it comes to the 2. It is the price difference. When it comes to Mana Crypt, they're all over 100 quid depending on what art you want. So the biggest thing when it comes to this is the cost of the card itself. Because Sol Ring is printed in most decks and the most easiest card to get, and there is more variations of Sol Ring than there is Mana Crypt, Sol Ring is really cheap and really easy to get your hands on, except for there's like 1 or 2 versions that are probably over a tenner, but most of them are under, which is great. Easy to get your hands on, but Mana Crypt, very difficult and very expensive. Next in this fight is Sisay's Ring. Sisay's Ring costs 4. So my biggest problem with this is Sisay's Ring costs 4 and it taps for 2. And I've seen a fair few people in the community and even in my own playgroup, people call Sisay's Ring a fair version of Sol Ring. However, I disagree. I think a fair version would be a 3-cost card for 2, not 4. Because when it comes to Sol Ring, I see a lot of people, and the biggest problem with Sol Ring is it's really good early, but it slowly dies off. It never becomes bad, but just the later you play it, the kind of more meh it becomes. So it becomes from broken to kind of meh. So that's why I think Sisay's Ring is not the best card. However, it is a good card in general, and I usually try and kind of put both in. And then there's the one that I would count if it didn't have Suspend, a fair Sol Ring, which is Soul Talisman. My biggest problem when it comes to Soul Talisman is Soul Talisman needs to be played on turn 1, because then you actually get it out on turn 3, and it can be cancelled, but both of them can, which is completely fair. However, the thing that makes Sol Ring so powerful is the turn 1 or turn 2 play, and then it kind of dies off slowly then. But with Soul Talisman, if you play it turn 3, you get it turn 6. You play it turn 6, you get it turn 9. So you really need to play it turn 1, and if you don't play it turn 1, it dies off fast. That's why I think this card is not the best unless you have a way to get rid of the suspense counters on it, or a way to kind of cheap it out. However, then that costs another card, which I would rather just take the Soul Talisman out and put in a Sol Ring. And I am one of those people, before I finish this part, is I have a Sol Ring in every single deck I own. So I'm more on the Sol Ring side personally. And then there is the lands, the big 4. There is Temple of the False God, Guildless Commons, City of Traders, and Ancient Tomb. So I'm going to start with Temple of the False Gods. One of the things I do like about Temple of the False Gods is how easy it is to get. It is easy, or as easy, or maybe just kind of slightly less. There's not much of a difference on how easy it is to get Temple of the False Gods. The last year or two, they're pretty much doing it as a second Sol Ring by throwing it into every deck that you can buy from Wizards of the Coast. So I really do like that. The biggest downside of it though is you need to have 5 lands for it to activate, which I would rather it be play for 1 and then after 5 turns it can go to 2, which would make it a bit better, because if you have it in your opening hand, it is pretty much useless until you get your 5th land. The only good side about Temple of the False God is it counts itself. It's not 5 others. So technically you need 4 of the lands and then Temple of the False God, where I think a good Sol Ring goes between turn 3, 4 or 5. So that's why I'm completely fine with Temple of the False God. However, I've seen a lot of people in the community give out that Temple of the False God is overly printed and is a really bad card. So I would like to hear people's comments when it comes to Temple of the False God, because I've only ever seen 2 sides of it. I've never gotten a clear picture in the middle. And this is personally my favourite one. It's called Guildless Commons. It is a bounce land, and when you play it, you get to return a land back to your hand, and it taps for 2 colourless. The reason I think this is not on par to Sol Ring, or that is not really played or really good, is the fact that it only enters tapped. If they literally got rid of them 2 lines saying that when it enters tapped, I think it would be on par with Sol Ring, because even though you have to bounce a land to your hand, it guarantees you a land next turn unless someone discards it or you discard it yourself. However, I think this is the closest I have seen to a fair version of Sol Ring if we got rid of the it enters tapped. And the other reason I think they should get rid of it enters tapped is that the other ones tap for colours, which is more important. So it's okay with them entering tapped. However, this is just 2 colourless mana, which really does mess up when it comes to colour fixing, which is what bounce lands are mainly used for. So this is why I think personally, if they made this a rare and got rid of the untapped, I think it would be an amazing card and on par with Sol Ring. Next up is City of Traders. This card is a card I've never seen before until I started doing research to this video, and I see where they came from, but it was poorly executed. This is a better version of Sol Ring on a very, very small circumstance. The reason I say this is a very small and niche card, and the only reason I would ever see myself playing it, is if I had a landfall deck where the whole point is to sacrifice my own lands and replay them from the graveyard, because it is a really good, you just get to play it and tap it as a Sol Ring, and then when you play your land for turn, it goes to the graveyard, and then you can play it from your graveyard, and that's really good strategy, but it is such a niche strategy that it's not really seen, so I do find it a very meh card, because overall, the 99%, it is a shoot in the foot. It is a betrayal, it is a backstab, because it's one of those things where you need as much mana as possible. Yes, it does tap for 2, but second you play a land, you have to get rid of it, and that is really bad, but it does come up with the name. So, that's why I think this card kind of needs a reprint with a slight change, or be put in more landfall decks with Graveyard Recursion. And then finally there is Ancient Tomb. Ancient Tomb I have no problem, I can see this as a really good card, but it reminds me more of a Mana Crypt than it does a Sol Ring, mainly because it does damage. And the reason I prefer a Mana Crypt than this card is because a Mana Crypt has a chance not to do damage to you. Even though it's 1 more, I would rather have the chance of the 3 damage, that's a kind of 50-50 shot, then every time I tap it, I'm guaranteed 2 damage. And again, the biggest problem with this card is the price on it. It is somewhere between 40 to 200 quid, depending on which art you want, with a kind of mid-grounds of like 50, roughly. So like majority of the cards are worth 50 quid when it comes to these. When it comes to these Ancient Tombs, the average is 50. So my own personal opinion of this is, after going through all the cards that do the same as Sol Ring, yes, I do agree it is the most powerfulest. On par with Mana Crypt and Ancient Tomb, and on circumstances, City of Traders. I do find them all to be really good. The difference is because Sol Ring has no other clauses. It doesn't do damage to you, it doesn't have a hefty price tag, and it doesn't be in niche decks, it can be in all decks. So yes, I can see where people think it is a bannable card, because a biggest problem with it is the turn one strategy, which everyone kind of gives out or is okay with. Again, I've always seen it as a 50-50 battle, because the biggest thing when it comes to Sol Ring, or the biggest complaint when it comes to Sol Ring itself, is that turn one I play a land, I play Sol Ring, I play Arcane Signet, and that is it. So I do not personally think it is a bannable card. However, I do think it is the strongest in its area, it's strongest in its niche, and that is why people want it banned. So I see where people come from. I just don't think it's bannable, especially since there are cards that are the strongest in their niche and are still not banned, that are way more bannable or worthy than Sol Ring. But as always, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. I would actually like to start making videos on people's thoughts and opinions and having a conversation, but not many people actually do like comment and give me their thoughts and opinions. So if you have watched this to the end, please tell me what you think of Sol Ring, and do you agree with my thoughts and opinions, or do you have your own? And again, also let me know if I missed any cards that do the same as Sol Ring. When I did do the research, I was kind of 50-50 on Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, but that taps for 3. So I did not add it in this video. But as always, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on all my social media and all that other good stuff. Share me around other platforms. I would like my channel to grow, and I love the community and the help I've gotten so far. Also remember that I have started a Patreon, so please go check that out. It gives people the polls, what videos I should do next. They get to join the Discord, and it is just to help me start growing my own community of Magic the Gathering people from around the world, because I love this game and I love talking to people about it. And if you like this video, I also made one where I talked about the 10 Planeswalkers, who did and who didn't get completed, and I done the corrections because I done a video originally where I gave my thoughts of who and who will not be completed, and now that all 10 have been announced, I've been giving my thoughts and opinions on the new version of it. Also, if you like anything Magic the Gathering related, there will be a playlist down below of just random Magic the Gathering videos, and I make other content too, so please have a go and look at that.